Us off. Okay, good afternoon. My name is John Law with the Department of Planning and Development. Welcome to the June 14th, 2023 meeting of the Committee on Design. Please be advised that this meeting is being recorded and live streamed to DPD's YouTube page. To our esteemed committee, thank you for volunteering your time to be part of this advisory group. To the members of the public who are joining us, what you will see today and in future COD meetings are projects currently under review by DPD staff. The committee is a voluntary advisory body of design professionals that provide their expertise on design issues. This committee is not a substitute for Plan Commission, as it is not a forum for public debate, nor is the advice of the committee legally binding. It is the hope that today's discourse will lead to recommendations that will elevate the design excellence of the city of Chicago. To today's presenters and those that have attended COD sessions in the past, please be aware that we have revised the format of these meetings. Teams will have 15 minutes to present as before. That'll be followed then by any questions and general comments from the committee members themselves. But please note that any discussion that takes place today does not represent the final recommendations of the committee. Those will be issued in writing within 1 week. And these recommendations will be reviewed by DPD staff prior to issuing them to the applicant teams to ensure they align with any zoning regulations, design and planning policies, and any other city priorities. Before we get to the agenda, to the members of the public, you are welcome to begin submitting comments and questions to the Q&A box. Committee members are invited to review this information during and after each presentation and incorporate the comments into the discussion. We will not be reviewing individual questions or comments from the public, but we will be recording them for use in reviewing the project with the committee members. Okay, with the sort of formal agenda out of the way, we have 3 items on our agenda today. The first being Woodlawn Social. Woodlawn Social is the winning submission from the 63rd Street request for qualifications that DPD released in August of 2022. Submitted by POA and KMW and designed by Koenig Eisenberg and Harley Ellis Devereaux, the project will create a mixed-use affordable housing development on 63rd Street between South Ellis and South Greenwood Avenue. The proposal will include 60 rental units and 10 for-sale townhomes, as well as approximately 8,500 square feet of ground floor retail space and 26 parking spaces. This project is subject to the Woodlawn Housing Preservation Ordinance, and as such is required to designate 30% of the rental units as affordable units at 30 to 50% AMI. And with that, I will turn it over to our design team here to share. Nathan, I think.
Hey, yeah, good morning, everyone.
Welcome.
Hey, thank you. It's nice to see you. I guess it's afternoon for you guys.
It is.
Oh, good. Yeah, and good. Troy's on there. I was going to ask to make sure he's going to share his screen. So you can go to the next slide, Troy. Sorry, Troy, will you go to the next slide? There we go. All right, so I'm Nathan Bishop. I am design principal at Koenig Eisenberg and lead designer on Woodlawn Social. And I'm going to bring us through the design of the project. I will try to be brief, but I am more than happy to take questions along the way if you would like. Happy to address as we go. Go to the next slide, Troy. So I'm going to bring us through a little bit of the thinking behind the project and then through some diagrams and drawings and recap some of the city's objectives. Next slide. We actually began the project by asking what role the building can play, both for the neighborhood and its residents. Go to the next slide. And we know that there's more and more activation happening along 63rd Street. So we really saw this as a chance to create a neighborhood town square, a center for Woodlawn, kind of leapfrogging between other activity centers, some in the future and some happening right now. Go to the next slide. And what we really did was look at a kind of innovation in project typology that worked to blend Chicago's boulevard and residential grains by introducing a cross grain to the boulevard and really creating a scale of development that breaks down the conventional street wall typology and infuse it with spaces of social exchange, plazas and courtyards. It was motivated in part by wanting to keep sunlight. This is on the south side of the street, so we want to keep sunlight coming to the boulevard, and partly by trying to make all units that have access to ample light and air while mutually benefiting public space on the sidewalk. Go to the next slide, Troy. So on the ground floor, we created spaces, one residential courtyard and one public plaza, kind of strung together along this expanded sidewalk, with storefront glazing pulled back from below the buildings above to create a more varied public space, one that has spaces of shade and sunlight and allows people to find a spot to feel comfortable. Not everyone wants the same experience, so we wanted something more varied. We also want to create a public space that was ample enough so that you could feel invited, even if you don't buy a coffee at a shop. Go to the next slide. We envision this breakup of the street wall, even, are you one ahead? Sorry, try to go back one.
I don't know if I can.
Oh, there we go. We envision this breakup to even more pronounced and valuable as 63rd Street develops and other infill sites are developed. But we did imagine, now go to the next slide. Thank you. As part of a larger vision, we thought that this neighborhood arc across the street could also anchor this distinct place and create even more of a town square and try to balance the development of the neighborhood with the community asset of a park. We can go to the next slide. So this is a zoomed in site plan. You could see how the two sites could work in conjunction together to create a real landmark public space in the neighborhood with a balance of retail and community amenity. And go to the next slide. And this is a bit of what we imagine that public plaza on 63rd would look like, with a balance of retail and social spaces for the neighborhood. Next. So as John said, the project is about, I think he said about 95,000 square feet. It actually appears as 5 buildings, but it's actually 2 double loaded bars and a stacked townhouse volume. And it's got about 9,000 square feet of public open space and 10,000 square feet of resident outdoor space. And that includes some of the rooftop garden spaces. And as John said, the project would be serviced by extending the existing alley east and west, creating tuck under parking and services along the alley at the back on the south side. Next slide. I think I'm trying to pull on the amazing tradition of Chicago architecture. I'm a big fan of Louis Sullivan. I wanted to create a building that spoke to both the ambitions of the competition and celebrated housing and public space. And you probably noticed in the renderings, there's a bronze underside, which is a nod to the way Sullivan would put ornament, where pedestrians can actually appreciate it on a building on the underside rather than just the face, but also looking to warm up the composition with a warmer material such as a composite wood plank. And you're seeing that interspersed with the windows on the upper levels. So as you're looking across the courtyards, your neighbors, there's a kind of value and celebration of the quality of the housing itself. Go to the next slide. This is a ground floor plan, so you can get a more clear idea of the expanded public space along the sidewalk and services located at the back of the alley. You can see on the left there, townhouse front doors, and then just to the right in the back, there's a shared residential courtyard with some of the affordable rental units. Then the blue is the retail, kind of hugging around and making some varied spaces in the public plaza. And then all the services and the parking, as I've said, is down at the bottom of the page in the alley. You can go to the next slide, Troy. Thank you. Here's some upper floor plans showing the basic way that the double loaded corridors are split and split the building into pieces that are more commensurate in scale with the neighborhood. You can go to the next slide. And you can see here the upper level and the rooftop, some rooftop amenity spaces linked together by this crinkly bridge. You can go to the next slide. North and south elevations showing the brick clad shaped volumes, kind of further articulating and bringing shape, volume, texture, and shadow play to the street face. You can go to the next slide. While on the side elevations of Greenwood and Ellis, you can see those plank panels and composite woods interspersed with the panelized brick cladding trying to expand the sense of generosity for the windows. And go to the next slide. So as far as the city objectives detailed in the competition, we work to realize and embody each of them. They actually are important in our body of work already. You can go to the next slide, Troy. So your goals of equity and inclusion, innovation, sense of space, sense of place, sustainability, and communication are all values we share, think they're important to us, and hopefully is evident in Woodlawn Social as well. Go to the next slide. So in addition to the affordable units and for sale townhomes, we've also have 9,000 square feet of public open space that allows people to hang out and feel welcome, regardless of whether they're shopping or not. It's really nice to have a project with no below grade parking and get some substantial trees in this public space. Real dirt in Chicago is a great asset that never happens here in LA. So I think it's a real chance to make some really great retail spaces, but also, again, a space for people to collect from the neighborhood and enjoy a more kind of rustic setting. Pulling some of that great quality you guys have on the residential streets of the tree-lined streets onto the boulevard and into the public spaces seems like something we can really do well here without having to build on a podium deck with parking below. Go to the next slide. I think in terms of innovation, I've talked about this a little already. We have this kind of new approach to the design of the commercial block that I believe has more benefit to more people than the conventional street wall approach. It also comes from a place of trying to balance and get, the street wall approach creates units that, especially on the south side, you have a bank of units that are always facing the sun and some that are always in the shade. But with this approach, there's more equity across the living conditions in the housing itself too, with ample access to light and air. And that's, with this typology, a mutual benefit to the public space as well. We go to the next slide. I think with the ample landscape plaza, we're trying to give a sense of place and really a moment of rest along 63rd Street with an architecture that has a strong but friendly design identity that speaks both to the history of architecture in Chicago, but also an optimism about the future and celebrates housing. You can go to the next slide. In addition to the configuration, the project has a series of elements that help it be energy and ecologically conscious. And I'm happy to bring you through any of the specific items if you have any questions about them, but some is the usual assortment. Some is, the rooftop panels, using them to shade some of the public spaces on the roof, high efficiency water and lighting fixtures. And then really excited about being able to do, again, on the ground floor, permeable pavers and water recharge. And of course, we've selected materials and are trying to pick ones that are environmentally and health conscious. You can go to the next slide. And of course, with the communication, we've had a couple community meetings and hope to continue the conversation with residents. It's something we do in our work a lot. Want to make sure we're balancing the neighborhood needs with the development of the project. And next slide. And that's basically the presentation. So I'm happy to thank you guys for having us here today and happy to take any questions you have.
Great, thank you, Nathan and team. COD members, the floor is now yours. Feel free to raise your hand, ask any questions or initial reactions to the project at this time. Phil, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a great presentation, beautiful. I think it'd be a great addition to 63rd Street. I was wondering if you could, though, go back to the site plan and maybe you could talk a little bit about the south facade of the building rather than the north facade is what faces 63rd Street. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. The south facade, Troy, if you can skip back or I can try and present my screen. The south facade is similar to the front in that it still breaks up, Philip, to the different bars. So the way that we've done the double loaded corridor, and maybe Troy, you could go, yeah, is that useful to look at? Yeah, right there. You can see that the way the building breaks up is still scale that's more commensurate with kind of row house and single family typology in the neighborhood. And some of the bigger apartment buildings, but the double loaded corridor also produces a break on the south side, so that those masses continue. There's not the same shaping and articulation. They're simpler volumes to the south, and maybe we could look at the south elevation, Troy.
Yeah. There's an alleyway through that, but one of the bars goes over the alley, is that right?
So if actually go to the ground floor plan, let's look at it there. Sorry, Troy, thank you for bearing with me. So the alley today actually doglegs from basically the left on this page and then over to the center and down. When I talk about extending it, it does not extend all the way to the east right now. So we're talking about having that go through, and yes, the buildings will project over that area for cars to move through on the south side. I don't know if you can zoom in, Troy, but there are some dashed lines that show the limits, Philip, of where the buildings are on the south. It is staggered, similar to on the north, so it's not just one sheer face at the south. The buildings do stagger back and forth.
I see. And then it's just the line of garages at grade, right? The parking.
Correct.
Is that open air, or are those?
We are looking at a combination to get some secure parking in garages and then have enough parking that's easy access to support workers and retail and residents. So we're still looking at that, but it looks like it'll be some combination of enclosed secure garages and easy access open parking.
Yeah, I really like the playfulness of the facades and the amount of public open space that you're able to achieve in this project. I think getting 9,000 square feet is pretty remarkable. And the other question I just had at the site planning level was your preference for the retail shifting more to the Greenwood side rather than the Ellis side. And I just wondered your sense of understanding the dynamics of the neighborhood and the north-south pedestrian movement. Isn't Ellis, I could be completely wrong, but isn't Ellis a stronger pedestrian corridor than Greenwood is?
I don't know if it's a stronger pedestrian corridor, but there is a school just to the east on the right that's existing. To the west is, I think, a future development site for the city. So it seemed like if there was a continued relationship of retail on that site for ground floor, there seemed to be a better chance of connecting up with the existing fabric. And maybe if we go to the kind of 3D axon on slide 22, Troy, might be able to see that a little bit better. It felt like the townhomes, you see it there, felt like they could make more of a connection of the street on Ellis with the adjacent fabric than we had the opportunity to do on the Greenwood side because of the existing school, and that street's just a little bit more kind of broken up. So we wanted something that, put stoops on the street and kind of pulled the way that the residential fabric came to meet the boulevard. And then also the spot for where we were thinking about the future pocket park across the street, because of the way that the streets jog, there was a great spot there right across from our plaza to make a bigger gesture in the neighborhood. So it was those two things about where we felt like we could pull on the existing residential fabric and where we could make bigger connections across 63rd Street.
I see. And is the park across the street part of your contract as well?
No, no, this was, we were asked as part of, and John, maybe you want to talk about this a little bit. We were asked to kind of envision in a way, 63rd Street. So I think it was an imagination about, gosh, we could, even further enhance the identity of the neighborhood and give it a landmark by having something where the plaza felt like it, had some balance across the street. But we did test it out with just more conventional commercial development across the street. And it still remains intact. It's just, it was an idea about, thinking about the future. It's not part of anything that's on our plate right now.
I see. All right, thank you.
Okay, Andre, go ahead. We're not hearing you. Sorry, Andre. I know you're having some audio issues. Phil, thank you for your comments there. Yeah, just to elaborate a little bit on what Nathan was saying, there are multiple, and Justin, you can feel free to jump in here too, but there are multiple city-owned sites here at a similar scale to this proposal. So we did ask each of the submitting teams to think about a larger urban framework for these sites, just to ensure that we're not doing piecemeal development, but hopefully, building into a larger vision. And so some of the urban design gestures like this open space, it's not guaranteed, but could sort of play into the longer build out of this area. So certainly an idea that we would love to see. Okay, Catherine, I guess while Andre's working on his audio, please jump in.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. In general, I really love the way that you've broken this building massing out and acknowledge the sunlight on the southern side of the street.
Yes.
It's really nice.
Thank you.
And I know with HED and POA on board, this will be a really green and sustainable building. So my question though, I'm curious how the townhouses work. It looks like there might be two level houses with another townhouse stacked on top. Could you just explain this, please?
Yep, I did not include sections, but it's basically 2-story townhouses that are stacked to make a 4-story building. So it's 2 levels of 2-story townhouses. And we're looking at, ways of testing that out. It's showing some rooftop garden space with kind of mass pulled back right now. But that's the basic proposal here, Catherine, where it's 2-story townhouses that are stacked to make a 4-story building.
Okay, and then would each, I guess I'm thinking of the townhouse typology in Chicago, where if you have a townhouse, you get a little bit of a front yard and a little bit of a rear yard as private space.
Yes.
How are you addressing that, if you are?
Yeah, I hope we are. It's part of the excitement of having the townhouse is so on Ellis, the townhouses that are on the ground floor, let's say, their first floor has a patio and entry out on Ellis. And then the units that are on top of those are the ones that would have the rooftop deck. Also, the ones on the ground floor would have a rear patio as well that's shared in that residential courtyard with the front steps and front doors to the rental units that are on the ground floor in that courtyard. Does that make sense? Answer the question.
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you, Catherine. Andre, let's try one more time here.
Let's see. Is this
There
working?
we go. Yes, it is.
We can hear you.
I'll go fast. Let's see how it holds up. I do have a question. First of all, this is a fantastic design, and I think a great addition not only to 63rd Street but Woodlawn as a whole. Regarding the alley and the overhangs, just wondering how much, particularly going toward the east side of the parcel along the alley, how much that overhang is actually happening. I think it's on page 13. You can go to your ground floor plan.
Yeah, let's go to the ground floor plan. I should probably be more clear, Andre. We're not proposing to overhang the existing alley whatsoever. All the buildings that we're proposing exist within the property line on the site.
Okay.
It's more of a conceptual extension of the alley across the property that happens east-west. So there are no buildings that'll overhang over the alley. But on the east side, since the property has a little dog leg to it, on the
Right.
east side, that's where the buildings would project over. It's probably more properly called the drive aisle than it would be alley.
Just to clarify, from a city standpoint, it'll be a privately owned.
So that will be
access road.
private.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Got it. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me clarify. I've been calling it an alley more than I should.
Yeah, kind of an important detail because that was the one thing
Yes.
that did jump
People,
out as
yeah.
we were reviewing this.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Andre. Eleanor, go ahead. Are you all set, Andre? Good, thanks.
Yeah, just a quick question. I was wondering about the materials and I know you're in a very early stage of the project. In terms of potential other materials in case value engineering needs to happen, and I was specifically thinking about the brick. Had your team discussed other alternatives, or is it too early?
Both. Yes, we have. Yes, we have discussed other alternatives. We're also looking at a panelized brick system rather than a real conventional, masonry system. It's going to be a rain screen system essentially to get our insulation requirements to actually work. I think we've looked at a number of spots, if we meet with VE, some of the structural ways that we can work at the building. I think the brick speaks to a lot of things in Chicago. It's not something I feel like could be easily swapped out. I think the scale of it we're looking at and the extent of it. But I think the key thing is that we're trying to highlight the public space by having something more embellished on the undersides. And that was imagined as a bronze reflective material, like a metal laminate.
Right.
So that there's something strong and exuberant about being in that public space and some reflectivity and light and warmth. And then once you get up into the faceted brick masses, another material of looking at those, we've used it here a bunch, the composite wood elements. There's a rice husk one. There's a number of different ones, but looking to warm up the brick. So the principles of having a material that warms up the brick works in contrast to it as a kind of warmer material, and the bronze, those are principles we want to keep in place. So I don't see the fundamental strategy of the identity of the building changing, though there will potentially refinement in the nature of the individual materials.
That makes sense. And I also want to note that I very much appreciated your explanation of how you organize the site, and especially looking at the aerial, it made a lot of sense. So thanks.
Thank you. Great. Thank you.
Phil?
Yeah. Yeah. Can you hear me?
Mhm.
I think this is a home run. I just love this project. I think Woodlawn will benefit greatly. It's so wonderful to see all that vacant land transforming finally, and 63rd Street coming into the next generation of investment. And this is a great way to start. So I just wanted to put that comment out for the record.
Thank you. We feel really lucky to have gotten the development team and the design team and the thinking and the competition from the city of Chicago. It feels like a really great fit. So we're very appreciative to be involved.
Yeah, great.
Okay. If there are no further questions or comments, I think that'll do it for item one. Thank you, team. Thank you, Nathan and team, for joining us all the way from LA, albeit virtually. And everyone else locally.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Sure.
Okay. Bye, everyone.
Okay. On to item two. Item two, Black Ensemble Theater located in Uptown Community Area, 46th and 47th Ward. Black Ensemble Theater is located at 4450 North Clark, and it's a proposed 78-foot tall, 6-story mixed-use development comprised of a 22,000 square foot performing arts education center 8,000 square foot media and technology center, 14,000 square foot feet of retail space, 50 affordable residential units, and 92 new parking spaces. The proposed development would be constructed across Clark Street from the organization's existing facilities. And with, yeah, I think just if you can bear with us for a minute here, we have to sort of bring in some more of our presenting team here. I'm trying to multitask. And as a point of record, because this project is being presented by Gensler, Andre Brumfield will recuse himself from committee comments.
And for the previous project, just for the record, John, I recused myself for the Woodland project.
Thank you. That was noted, but yes, good to raise it here. Thank you. Okay, with that, is there someone from the presentation team that would like to share their screen? Okay, go ahead. You have 15 minutes to present when you're ready.
Nick Farmer of Near Architects. With me today is the team of Near Architects, Gensler Site Design. I have Gina Wu from Site Design and from Gensler and EJ to present with us today. We're waiting for Jackie Taylor. She's supposed to give an opening statement if she's around. Jackie, are you there?
Jackie and Chris Nesbitt need to be promoted, please, if we could have them added.
Thank you. Yep, doing that right now.
Thank you. And Tanetta as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any of our attendees, if you need to be promoted to a panelist, please go ahead and raise your hand and we'll take care of that.
Hello. Hello.
Hi, Jackie.
Yes, Jackie. Hi, Jackie.
Hi. I was on, but I was having technology problems. So, okay. I just want to start by introducing the Black Ensemble Theater's Free to Be Village. This is a development that was conceived in 2006. It is a reflection of the mission of the Black Ensemble Theater, which is to eradicate racism. It's a reflection of that mission outside of the theater walls. It's a community that reflects it reflects that we are united as human beings, and when you come to the village, you are free to be. It does contain a media and technology center, or 4-story performing arts education center, 50 units for affordable housing for artists, and we're excited that we have gotten this far, and I'll turn it over to the team to talk the details.
Thank you, Jackie. Next slide, please. Again, I mentioned earlier, Anthony Akindele with Near Architects. Yina Wu and Mijay will be presenting with me today. So moving forward, as Jackie has mentioned, this is a Black ensemble on the north side of Chicago between Sunnyside and Clark Street. The existing building that you see, there's an existing theater on the west side of Clark Street, and the new proposed new building would be on the east side of Clark Street, directly across the street from the Black Ensemble Theater. So what we're seeing here is mostly transportation connectivity that surrounds the building within a quarter-mile to a half-mile radius within 5 minutes walking distance. Next slide, please. And what we're showing is just the existing zoning use bounds that surrounds the sites, or existing example, Black Ensemble is Zone B3, our site is Zone C12. We are combining those two together to go to plan development and change to B3. Next slide, please. And you're looking down at the existing one to the bottom of your screen, and across the street is where the Black Ensemble, the new proposed project, will go. Given the building massing around the site varies from 29 feet to 64 feet high in various site contexts in various surrounding the building PD boundaries. Next slide, please. Again, we're looking at the site context. Site A, B, C, and D just shows the view of the existing context around the site, around the existing Black Ensemble to the left, and the new building will be on the east side of Park Street, as mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. And also the existing site context, again, G looking through east side on sunny side, looking north, south is the E, looking again on this south side of the new building, and F looking towards the northwest of this side. Next slide, please. Again, you can see the Black Ensemble Theater, or the existing one. To the north of that is an open space pavilion, which should be a photo of something to design later on. And across the street is where the new building will go, as well as down north side of Sunnyside is a future business hub, which is going to be a renovation of existing building. So next slide, please. In creating this village, this free to be village, it's a place where you're free to be who you are and who you want to be. So we are using this different type of materials to make the connectivity open space, connect the, if there can be 3 buildings within this village, and how do we connect the 3 buildings together? By using different type of paving patterns, connecting the sidewalk and the artists and the performing arts pavilions. So making that a connection and a connectivity between all the 3 sides. Next. So again, Jackie really pushed us in trying to come up with something that really represents her vision, which is we call free to be a village where everyone is free to be. And in creating these options, we come up with 3 different mapping studies. The first one is the just straight bar building, which we think that again is not work, but at least it's very simple. And the second option is creating a plaza with a courtyard which activates the public sidewalk and then brings everybody into this space. While the third option is just an open space plaza that divides the building into 2, and you have 2 activities to the north and 1 activity to the south. So we kind of work with this, and you will see later on how the final concept, which is the option B, the plaza, was developed. Next slide, please.
Anthony, you've got about 10 minutes remaining.
Okay. Yeah. Again, we've got, this is just mostly the site plan free to be village, and residential buildings is on the north side. On the east side of the street, next slide, please, just run through this. In doing this, we closing off existing, the existing building has a driveway through which we're eliminating the driveway along Park Street. Access to the below grade parking comes off Sunnyside through the alley into the, with a ramp down to the grade with about 71 parking spaces. Next slide. Again, you begin to see how the three distinct functional spaces that Jackie has charged us to create, which is the media, technology, performing arts and education, and artist residence, how they begin to come together to interwoven. We actually call those three of them mind, body, and spirit. So the artist residence represents the body, the educational performance represent the mind, and the media technology center represents the spirit. Next slide, please. And then you begin to see how the plaza is now into create the connectivity between all these three functions, the three energies, bringing the energy of the performing arts from inside to the outdoor. So you're creating this interaction spaces between indoor and outdoor spaces. And how you do that from the ground floor, walk up to the second floor and create connectivity. To the blue represents the media technology and then the performing arts center. And then the podium is where we create the terrace where everyone is free, is connected to all the three levels. Next one, please. And then you see how the third building, this is the three different distinct volume, the three distinct energy that Jackie has charged us to, to develop. This represents a really important aspect for the program that we were charged with. Next slide, please. Again, then moving forward, create different forms, different shapes to create the spaces. And again, we kind of test all these forms together to see which one works well. Next slide, please. And I will have Gina to talk about these different massing elevation studies that came through.
Thank you, Anthony. So here are some facade studies we have done. So like Anthony mentioned before, we're trying to kind of give the three buildings their own different identities. And at the same time, they could be read as one. So we first took a more conservative approach. As you see here, option 1 and option 2 have more kind of, opaque walls and limited openings. So we tested out different materials and different color schemes. To the third one, what we were trying to create is something like an in and out kind of feeling. It reads as a glass box with two colorful boxes inside, which we think could bring an active and engaging vibe to the street. But we found that the first two are a little bit too heavy, especially the media center, which contradict what we're picturing at the beginning, something contemporary and light to match the existing Black Ensemble Theater. And the third one, while it's interesting, we think it's crucial to consider energy implication of excessive glazing. Next slide, please. So in between shading and glazing, we ended up with twisted louver, and it's pretty simple that the louver will be perpendicular to the glazing when openings are needed. Otherwise, they will be just parallel to the wall. And the facade, at the same time, the facade changes passively due to the shading casted by the louvers, and also based on different times of day and different location when people move along the street. Next slide, please. And here's some facade study for the residential buildings. These are more about playing with the material and colors. Next slide. And this is what we end up with. It's just a view showing how everything kind of get together. Next slide, please. And this is another one showing how the performance art education center could be like at night. Next slide. Minjae.
My name is Minjae Gula with Site Design Group. Talking about landscape architecture and just open space, Anthony mentioned that the buildings were formulated with mind, body, and spirit, right? And I think for many, this open space that is within the center of the building is essentially viewed as the heart of the building. It is the moment in which we connect with the community, with the public, but we also connect them to the various spaces of programming at the ground plane, but also at the terrace level. So given that we have the two different levels of public space, we had to balance this idea of grading coming up and equity and inclusion. And so with this, learning so much from the Black Ensemble Theater and their mission, we found this beautiful opportunity to essentially create this amphitheater. I don't want to call it a stramp because it's not a ramp. It's a very, very gentle sloped walkway. We are trying to keep it at 4%, if not less. And so by doing so, we have to essentially unfold the ramp, the sloped walkway. But by doing that, we're able to embed soft measures of landscape, some screening, as well as seating. So by creating this, next slide, you start to see this feeling of an amphitheater that starts to connect you to the programming spaces above, but also the retail activity that's at the ground floor. Next slide. This one just sort of pulls it all together with the residential building on the right and the Performance and Media Technology Center on the left. We are considerate of security and closing the upper terrace at night. So we wanted to gently integrate this moment of this perforated screen that has this opportunity for commissioning an artist to create, let's say, a mural or possibly some type of graphic that can start to speak to the engaging programming that's inside. So instead of it feeling like a barrier, it's speaking to resonates the programming of BET. So during the daytime, the sliding door at the staircase would open and it leads you upward. Next slide. This view is from Clark Street looking north. And what's really beautiful about what happens here is that the public realm, the open space begins to expand. We feel that there's this beautiful opportunity of having the ground floor media and education programming, but also the retail be outward facing, being able to activate that block along Clark Street. Next slide. And we always have to consider day and night, what does this space become in the evening? When there's evening programming at the performance center or the media center, that programming then begins to still activate this plaza space, but also having the residents also the residential component to it. There's this feeling of activity and community presence. Next slide. So in the process of this design, we have always been looking towards the Clark Street Crossroads in order to first understand and align with the community's visions for economic and land use development. Wanting to, by creating the ground floor retail, creating this open space, becomes a moment that attracts new businesses, but also allows existing businesses to thrive. We also mentioned the 50 affordable housing units, which we want to have for this project. And of course, promoting the sustainability aspects of LEED Silver and also enterprise green communities. Next slide. When we look towards connectivity and multimodal mobility, understanding that BET's existing building is right across the street, we want to make this safe space for pedestrians and also for cyclists. So looking towards the street crossroads, we want to find a moment to implement decorative crosswalk striping. Again, ways in which to signalize and make pedestrians visible. We also are integrating on-site bike parking within the property, interior and exterior, but also would love to continue our conversations with CDOT to understand their visions and sort of the roadway alignment with installing the future bike lanes and how that works with our loading zones, or not loading zones, sorry, the bus or drop-off areas. Next slide. And then, of course, public realm. And, one thing to note about this development is that it removes an existing parking lot and curb cut that opens into Clark Street. So we see this benefit towards, again, creating a safer space for cyclists and pedestrians. The program has a literary cafe at the corner of Sunnyside and Clark, which we see as an opportunity to activate that corner, and is going to have a really great relationship to the existing Black Ensemble Theater across the street.
Sorry to
And
rush you, EJ. We got just a couple minutes left here.
okay,
Thank you.
and then final is just about opportunities to integrate and support local artists with mural and public artwork. Next slide. Great, so I'll turn this over to Anthony.
And again, as mentioned earlier, thanks, Mijay, that there are 50 affordable housings, 79, almost 8,000 square foot of media technology center. The educational performing arts about 22,000, and the retail space on the ground floor with about 92 parking spaces. Next slide, please. I'll just run through the site plan and floor plan so that we can take Q&A. So again, you can see how the activation of the ground floor dealing with the plaza, how it's kind of wind its way through to the terrace and through to the connectivity of the three distinct vaults. Next slide, please. A ground floor, again, access from the alley to the parking below grade. Next slide, please. On the ground floor, then you can begin to see how these three spaces are woven together with a little setback on Sunnyside with a literary cafe, through the lobby to the conference room, then to retail space. There are currently three retail spaces and the lobby for the artist residence to the south side. Two loading zones were provided. One loading zone, we serve the literary cafe in the educational performing arts centers as well as the retail spaces. The other loading zone to the south serves the residential artist residence only. And there are about 21 on-grid parking spaces that's on the next slide, please. And you begin to see how the form follows function, as Frank Wright has said, that the form begin to inform what the program inside will is. So you see the screening room, community space, pop-up spaces, some selection of classrooms on the ground floor, interaction spaces where people can impromptu perform and start to play guitar or start acting. And then straight down to the terrace, there is connectivity to the terrace, and as well as connectivity to the artist residence, which begins the second floor, community room, plaza, terrace, green spaces at the terrace level, and then you can then bring you down through the gentle walkway down to the sidewalk. Again, this is really interconnected. Interconnectivity is really very strong in this program. Next slide, please. And then second floor begin to have different also additional classrooms at the educational performing arts center, interaction zone. We have the marketing office for BET, as well as recording and editing station. Then the third floor of the artist residence. Next slide, please. Again, fourth floor of the Educational Performing Arts Center has 2 movement studios, additional classrooms, and interaction spaces as well. And then the fourth floor for the residential, which has collaboration space. You know, in people, these are artists, they can come here and collaborate on their own, and as well as a residence lounge. Next slide, please. And then the 5th and 6th floors, typical for the artist residence, and we have a system of some green roof. Next slide, please. I should mention though that this building is designed, we should see this slide later on for to be really energy and sustainability is key, is one of our main points in doing this, but we will see the slide later on. Again, this is the terrace park. You see different activities on some passive areas and some active areas at the terrace for the residents, as well as the users of the educational and performing arts center. Next slide, please. And Gina, you want to just quickly talk
sure.
about?
I know we're running out of time. Yeah, I'll just flip through them this quickly. So it's just some sections showing the building. So the building will mainly be metal frames, and we're thinking of using Prodema for the louvers. They don't require a lot of maintenance comparing to real woods. Next slide. And the education center will have similar materials, concrete for the podium and long span steel framing on the top for the basketball court. Next slide. The residential, similarly concrete for the podium, cold for metal frame above. Next slide, please. So these are just some building and street elevations. You can see, let's keep going. You can see the buildings are not something crazy, and they actually well blend into the context in terms of height, massing, and scale. Just keep going. Next slide.
We just briefly talk about the sustainable design for this project. Right now, we are designing the Media Technology Center as well as the Education and Performing Arts Center as minimum LEED silver. So our goal is to get the LEED gold while we're designing the artist residence for enterprise green communities certification. Also, we are proposing to decarbonize the building. All these buildings are going to be mostly electrified buildings, so we do not intend to bring any fossil fuel or gas to the building. So again, it's going to be a sustainable facility that becomes a beacon along the Park Street corridor. Next slide. And with that, that ends our presentation. We thank you very much, and you want me.
Okay, thank you, team. Committee members, the floor is now yours. Eleanor, thanks for kicking us off. Go ahead.
Sure. Just quickly, I wondered if you could go back to the diagrams where you were showing the elevations in terms of scale with the rest of the street. Yeah, it was towards the end here. I was particularly interested in Sunnyside and the two existing, I think they were two flats or houses on Sunnyside. Do you have an elevation of that?
The west elevation, yeah. I mean, the north elevation should show that,
I thought it was the south elevation that it would show, because it was next to your, I believe it was Technology Center.
Yeah, so
right.
you can
So
see
that
the
would
one
be
on
the
the
north
right.
That would be the north elevation.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so the houses are dotted in on that elevation.
Right.
So I wondered about the scale of the building compared to the surroundings. I think you get a lot more with Clark Street. You can put a lot more on there. And overall, I really enjoyed the site plan and how you guys were able to really address your program in a thoughtful manner and break it up and tying it with the theater across the street. And I can tell so much thought has been put into this. But the scale is something that I'm always concerned about, especially when you go and reach out to community members. Can you comment on that? And have you had any community meetings?
Yes, thanks, Brenna. We've had a couple of community meetings and neighborhood organization meetings as well. We did not get that type of comments. And again, I think the only one that we're really concerned is the residential building, the artist resident building that we think is a little taller than the rest of the neighborhood, but the 3 residential building on Sunnyside and the Performing Media and Technology Center really does not overpower the residential building as far as we think it overpowers. And again, from the beginning, we show that the building varies from 29 feet to 64 feet in height. So I think really try as much as possible to maintain the heights within the within the neighborhood.
Yes, Eleanor, I had worked with many of the community block clubs and organizations, and we've been talking about this now for about 4 years, and the community is very much in support of the project. Their concern is the apartments, which are 6 stories. They're concerned about the 6 stories. And we explained at the meeting that getting 50 apartments, we needed 50 apartments for funding. And getting them in that space, we had to go up 2 stories. So we will continue to have our community meetings. The alderman is going to sponsor the next one. But thus far, that has been, along with some aspects in terms of digging into the ground and what it does to the Dover Street. We're taking everything that the community is saying very seriously, and hoping to satisfy everyone's concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Catherine, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. I think my concern is similar to Eleanor's, and I'm looking at the north elevation, I think on the package that you submitted, where you really do start to see the mass. Let me back up. In general, I think the way you've broken the massing down and your whole village, I think the way you perceive this either coming north or south on Clark Street is really skillful. And I think it's going to be a huge asset to the community. But I am curious about the north elevation and that wall that's right behind those 3 residential units. It may not be here. It was in the package that we had to review. And if it's not in here, I would just ask that you take a look at that again, because it looks like it's 1, 2, 3, maybe 5 stories of a blank wall.
Are you done, Catherine?
Yes, that was my question. Yeah, just please take a look at the north elevation.
Right. Thank you. We will really, as much as possible, try to study the north elevation. That's adjacent to the residential homes. Yeah, we will try to study that as well. Thank you.
Anthony, I have that north elevation. Do you want me to put that on the screen real quick?
Please.
Allow me to share, please, John. Oh, actually, I think,
Yeah, that was the elevation.
Right.
So
Right.
I know you can resolve all that because you've done it very skillfully on all other sides.
Right, no, the point you have taken, we will again try as much as possible to study this north elevations, come back with something very, which is, a revision to what we have. So, and something that's appealing and something that doesn't overpower the adjacent residences. So, thanks for the comment.
It would be great if you could acquire those.
Yeah.
I'm sure everyone's loud about that.
It's in the works.
Okay, Phil, go ahead.
All right, thank you. Great presentation, and I want to commend you all on a really wonderful design. I like the way you broke up the presentation. I just wanted to comment back that same way. So the massing, to me, the emphasis on massing, as we've all been talking about, the 3 distinct volumes, I think was a great way to deal with the program. It's very interesting on the street, and the stepping down to the corner, I think, is good. I agree with the previous comments that that north wall of the Performing Arts and Education building seems to need a little work with the existing townhouses, but media and tech on the corner and the housing on the opposite end, I think works really well. And it seems to me I've been seeing quite a few projects, residential projects on Clark Street that are in the 6-story range. And I just wonder if the city is seeing this corridor, which is so transit oriented with Wilson and Lawrence Red Line stops, that this density is really justified. It seems like it is. The ground level treatment, I think, is also pretty remarkable, that it's with the Media and Tech Center and the Performing Arts Center, and then the retail that you have around this open space, I think is really a great addition to Clark Street. I hope you can justify that much retail. It seemed like it was almost 12,000 square feet of retail, but I think the intent for a very active street level is there. And this idea of skin being luminous and transparent yet screened, and the use of wood, I think, is also very imaginative. I would probably have pushed back if it was a all glass box on the corner. I think this is a softer way of having a presence and still fitting into the neighborhood. So I think that's a very nice resolution, the whole skin of all 3 volumes. My questions were more about the role of the amphitheater, and what is that on a normal day, and how often is that programmed, and would it be used at all during the daytime on a normal unprogrammed day, or would that be more of a void? And I just wonder how, once you step and ramp and switch back, it's very hard to program that space. So I just was wondering how you see that being an active part of the Clark Street corridor on normal days. And yeah, go ahead.
I visualize that as a community, an outside terrace for the community to use as they choose. There'll be a restaurant, there'll be food in the cafe. In the summer, in the spring, people can come into that area and sit and eat and communicate and talk. It's the area for the artists where they can come and congregate and meet. It's not an area that the theater intends to actually program. We want for the community to be able to, if they want, somebody wants to bring their guitar out and play the guitar, or somebody wants to read, whatever it's a community space, and we envision that the community will utilize it for its beauty and its function as a gathering space.
Well, I think that's wonderful intent, and I just think that this would be a rare space for this part of Clark Street, and it would, I think, work really well with the theater across the street and everything that's going on in Uptown right now. I just would consider just how people use this, what role maybe food plays with the amphitheater, that somehow maybe the cafes and restaurants have more of a presence on the steps, or I don't really know. I just think as you design this, keep thinking about how people will comfortably use this. It doesn't have much shade. It faces south. I wonder if it could be greener or shaded in some way. But I think it's a great idea. I think of everything I'm seeing today, I think that's the one area that needs additional thought. But I think this is just a marvelous, very inspirational project.
Absolutely, Phil. Thank you for that comment. We definitely would be considering shade and landscaping next. I think now that if we can work the landscape out, being able to provide some screening for sure, and more thought on how the spaces and programming are utilized, and how this site, the plaza, can be a support for that.
Mhm. Great. The one other question I just had, that we don't talk about this very often, but this project seems to be leaning that way, but there's so much pressure on design teams to go beyond LEED ratings. And I think the gold rating is a great aspiration, but there's so much interest now in operational and embodied carbon reduction in the choice of materials and how buildings are designed to heat and cool. And I think that this is a wonderful project for you to continue to pursue that as well. How is this a model for zero carbon or dramatically reduced carbon? You've already talked about an all-electric building, no fossil fuels, the use of wood. You're already going that way. I think there's probably a story here about reduced carbon that I would encourage you to use too, because that story is going beyond LEED.
Thanks for the comment. I feel we will take that into consideration and study that very thoroughly. Appreciate the comment.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Maria.
Thank you. Jackie, Anthony, congratulations on an amazing project and a beautiful presentation. No secret, but it's a kind of beautiful mission also, the organization you represent. So we don't have enough like you. So thank you for your work. I will agree with Phil, everything that he said, copy paste, repost. So my question was going to be exactly about that amount of retail that is in the first floor. And I was wondering if you had agreements already in place with tenants that require that much square footage. Is there a financial implication, meaning the income from those rents makes or breaks the project? Like, what is the flexibility to rethink that first floor in retail distribution and composition? Because I totally agree with Phil that amphitheater, that public space is such an exciting idea that it feels like that's the next portion of the project where you want to focus your thinking to continue developing that into a space that can be really exciting. Perhaps different kinds of sitting, at the ideas for interaction, leaving shade rather than shade structures, I will say. I think I will be more specific in that regard. Visibility, visual connection, connectivity, like those kinds of things. But those, all those are fantastic questions for the design process that I wanted to just understand a little bit more about. Where is that what are those commitments with those retail spaces are? Like, are they in place? Are there tenants that require that much space? Like, what kind of flexibilities do you have to continue working on the first floor to explore different kinds of generosity to that community amphitheater?
We have a committee in place that is actually looking at the retail aspect of this. The retail is twofold. Number one, I wanted to bring in income for the theater so that the theater has earned revenue outside of ticket sales and fundraising, because we need something stronger, especially going into the future and sustaining the theater so that it can continue its mission for generations. We want retail that addresses our mission. It's not a Starbucks, or it's not of that essence. It's retail that will push forward the concept of the village, which is free to be, but also serve to push our mission of eradicating racism forward. So we have a committee that is looking across the country in terms of what does that really mean? We found Busboys and Poets, which is a fabulous restaurant in Washington that reflects our mission succinctly. So what we're doing is we're looking at different avenues of how to build this space so that it really is a reflection and extension of the mission of the Black Ensemble Theater. So right now we're in the very beginning stages of it, and we've had folks come to us to say we want to build this or we want to, but their mission, it didn't fit into the village, and that's very important to me, that whatever is here reflects the mission of the Black Ensemble Theater. So that's why that committee was put together, and we're looking. If we don't find what we need, we have to go back to the drawing board. But so far, there's many different ways to program this space, and we're going to first look at what we can bring to the community that will help unite and engage the community in a much more diverse and active way than just plain retail.
Thank you. I think that process is going to provide you all with all sorts of learnings to tailor that space in the amphitheater to those future tenants that will support the mission of the group. So you're in the right track.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Jackie.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I think that does it for this item. Appreciate the presentation. We will now welcome our third group in. I'm going to start to invite some people to join us. Okay, the Lake and Halstead development at 800 West Lake Street, the near west side, 27th Ward. 800 West Lake Street is a proposed amendment to Plan Development 1468 with a net site area of 35,688 square feet for sub-area A. The applicant is proposing to revise the base zoning district to a DX10. The amendment includes a revised design, increased height, new site plan configuration, and new PD boundaries from the previously approved proposal. Excuse me. The proposal includes a multi-story 412-foot residential building containing over 375,000 square feet, 406 dwelling units, 102 accessory parking spaces, ground floor retail space, and 2,400 square feet of open space. And with that, we'll welcome our design team. Share. Okay, take it away. Please try to keep your presentation to 15 minutes.
Okay, hi, my name is Brian Terza. I'm an associate principal at GREC Architects. Also with GREC Architects is managing partner Greg Randall, and representing the joint venture ownership group are Walter Robinson, Rob Eshu, and Bill Wolk from Ascend Real Estate Group. First off, thank you for your time this afternoon. We really look forward to sharing our vision for the development of this project. We'd like to start off by reading the design narrative. After this, we'll refrain from just reciting text, but we want to make sure that we're using the precise language that we've crafted to describe what is really at the heart of this project. So the proposed development anchors the prominent corner at Lake and Halsted Streets through compelling facade design, emphasized verticality, and activated streetscapes. This project uniquely unifies the facade expression of the podium with the residential tower, a response that elongates the appearance of the tower and camouflages the presence of the parking levels, which are too often unsightly afterthoughts of the design process. The application of bold accent color and geometric inflections at the corners bring a character to the project consistent with a high standard of design in the West Loop. So as an amendment to the PD, we'd like to outline the changes that we are seeking. In the previously approved PD approved in 2020, the project was just this parcel here on the south of the block. It was programmed as a 21-story hotel use, consisting of 468 guest rooms and 0 on-site parking. All parking would be valeted off-site. We are seeking to add site area from the PD to the north, PD 1277, and that consists of this dogleg shown here, which is existing surface parking and alley to remain, and an existing 7-story commercial building, sub-area B, also to remain. In addition to the site area changes, we are seeking a change of use from hotel to residential, and seeking a change in height from 265 feet to 412 feet. The underlying zoning for this project would be DX10, and it will comply with the applicable design guidelines of its location. Our project site is uniquely located. Both Halsted and Lake Street are major arteries of the city. The L tracks are along Lake, and then it also has this proximity to the I-90-94 expressway, and with all those factors together, create a real prominent site, given that it is centered north-south on the West Loop, and that it helps to hold the east boundary of the West Loop on Halsted. It's in a very auspicious location, and given the lower developments to the east, there is fantastic visibility both to and from the loop to this project. So we see it as a beacon to the West Loop, and something that really anchors this street wall along Halsted. Here's an aerial image of the site, and this portion to the south at Halsted and Lake Streets, where the development, the tower will be located. You can see the adjacency to the L tracks here. Displaying the adjacent proposed, approved, and under construction projects, you'll see that the project height and zoning is well within a appropriate level of development. And this slide also depicts the low building heights to the east and how this project helps to, again, set that eastern boundary of the West Loop. From the other angle, showing the multitude of other developments in the area, and how, again, contextually, it is at a very appropriate height given the location. And again, in elevation, these are the projects with immediate proximity. Our site is very transit friendly. We're in close proximity to the CTA stop at Morgan, as well as several bus stops along Halsted and a couple of bike lanes. For the project design, our aim was to create a sophisticated, iconic architecture to emphasize verticality. In early conversations with DPD, we were encouraged to pursue vertical point tower appearance rather than the commonplace bar tower massing. We worked closely with them. I had several meetings to refine the proportions and tower location and corners sculpting to really get the massing right. Additionally, we wanted to incorporate a signature color to give the building a unique identity within the West Loop. The slide contrasts the massing of the previously approved hotel with the new proposed residential massing. You can see the more slender, graceful tower proportion here versus in the proposed massing versus the previously approved hotel massing. So we do feel like this is an improvement. Additionally, you can see how the tower absorbs the podium expression in this massing rather than the tower stopping above the podium. We feel like in addition to that being an objective coming from DPD, that this does help to integrate the parking levels into the facade expression far better than we often see. And here I'm actually studies showing that progression, both exploring heights and different methods of sculpting. What we also collaborated with DPD on was the location of the tower, setting it back off of Halsted to provide some relief at this tight corner. The existing Halsted sidewalk is narrow, so setting it back helps give this corner some breathing room, and it also affords the tenants and public some open space along Halsted. We've also pulled the tower in off of the western property line in order to provide an amenity deck for the tenants. Our facade expression is based on the concept of interlocking forms. So articulating these and inflecting these corners with subtle geometric shifts, introducing accent colors, and wrapping those around the primary facades to emphasize the interlocking form partie. You can see that played out in perspective, and you can see how the vertical fins on the building, when viewed from an angle, are actually start to become perceived as a solid geometry and nicely contrast from the typical structural glazed window wall. The tower also, as previously mentioned, extends down to the ground floor, encapsulating the podium rather than conflicting with it. Again, this really emphasizes the verticality of the tower and helps to mask the expression of the parking garage, which is often an afterthought. At the ground floor, as mentioned, we're providing a substantial setback along Halsted, providing open space to the building tenants and the public. We're locating retail along Halsted and the residential lobby along Lake Street to fully activate those frontages and we're being mindful of the location of the back of the house and support spaces to pull those off of the primary frontages and toward that alley and our site interior. Our site also features a covered porte cochere in this area with a two-way drive aisle, a drop-off zone to pull traffic off and drop-offs off of the busy nearby streets, and a two-way garage ramp into the building.
Just let you know you're at the 10-minute mark at this point.
Okay. Landscape features tightly clustered aspen trees, organic forms, built-in seating, and potential for a sculptural element to really anchor this corner of Lake and Halsted, as well as an opportunity to embrace the adjacent existing building, which we'll show in further detail in following slides. So here's a depiction of that corner from the street level. And again, you can see the expression of the tower continuing down. Here's a depiction of the porte cochere, which we'll continue to study and evolve. And we know that this is an area that will need to be engaging and welcoming and safe for the public, and that it warrants a lot of thought, and we'll continue to put effort into doing that. And that especially applies at night, and making sure that it is well lit and welcoming during that time. Here's an enlarged view of that porte cochere, and the opportunity for a feature wall along the adjacent building, either as part of the building itself or built in front of it. The ground floor introduces materials that are at a nice human scale, introduces planters and stone bases and custom light fixtures to engage the public and enhance the public realm. At the parking levels, we are introducing slots in the window wall, 1-foot gaps to provide ventilation. Those gaps are infilled with metal panels, perforated metal panels to match the accent color. So that works with the facade concept, also provides ventilation to the garage. Balconies will be provided at a substantial number of the residential units and will continue up for the height of the tower. You can see how that all comes together at the upper half of the tower and the significant views looking toward the loop. The elevations represent how on the narrower facade we step out at the corners, and how at the wider facades we step in, effectively creating more proportional length between the long and short facades at the top of the building. It has the effect of giving it a more square appearance at the top, and kind of in concert with the point tower concept. And we are proposing a similar approach on the west and north elevations. We're proposing a number of traffic and site improvements. We're happy to field questions on those after the presentation, if there are any. We have performed shading studies, and that helped to determine the tower location, pushing it toward the eastern side of the site, allowing the residential podium deck on the western side of the site where it will receive the most natural light. The project will provide 20% affordable housing all on site that yields 81 units. And we will be seeking Green Globes, 2 Globes certification with additional sustainable features to meet the minimum 100-point path prescribed by the city's sustainability goals. So we're also targeting items like stormwater, plantings, and green roof, and as well as energy efficient fixtures for that. We have a full deck of floor plans, if that's of any benefit during the Q&A session, but otherwise, thank you for your time this afternoon. We really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. At this point, any questions or comments from committee members? Bill, thank you.
Hi, thank you for the presentation. We've seen so many high-rise buildings in the Fulton Market area. It's just astounding. I guess, my biggest question here is really what is innovative about this project? I didn't see anything in the presentation that I would consider innovative. And there are lots of areas to target. I'm just sort of wondering where to direct my comments. It bothers me to see a lobby the full length of a street, and we have a very large residential lobby all the way along Lake Street. It seems like you could adjust that so the lobby is not the whole south facade of the building, but you could get more retail or additional retail on Lake Street as well, which is also a mixed-use street. And rather than turning the entire edge to, one door and a residential lobby. And I just think holding this corner, you talk about it as a gateway into Fulton Market. I think it doesn't need a residential lobby that dominates the whole street the way you're currently designing it. So I would encourage you to try to push the other components of the lobby further into the building, or adjust that ComEd space, or somehow get something else active on the street level. So both sides have some contribution to the city. And just another all glass facade tower, it really bothers me. The west side is the same as the north side. You didn't say anything about heat gain. I'd really like to know your energy strategy for this building, and how you resolve the heat gain with a full glass facade to the west. And I don't know, these tiny balconies, I would love to see a more innovative design. I'm sorry to not be that positive. I think the massing is fine. I think the massing at Halsted is fine. But I just wish this was a more innovative building. I know that's terrible to say that. I'm sorry, but I think you guys can do better.
Thank you for the feedback. We appreciate that, and we'll definitely take that all under consideration. We'll definitely study the ground floor program and make efforts to shuffle things around. And we know that activating the streetscape is essential for the success of the project, and we'll definitely make efforts to do so. As for the sustainable strategies and the response to heat gain, we will be locating spandrel panels at strategic locations across the tower in compliance with energy code requirements, and we will definitely be studying the distribution of those to weight them toward the facades with the most heat gain.
Thank you. Thank you for that. I think it's it's an opportunity to kind of lead high-rise design to the next level. And it's a great site, it's a great project. And it could be more of a landmark design for this part of Chicago. So thank you.
Thank you, Phil. Eleanor, go ahead.
Thanks. So I have a few specific targeted comments on this. And thank you guys for the presentation. I appreciate how thorough everything is and going back from the beginning, from the previous design. Two of my comments, you know, I realize that they are probably going to touch on more city policy things, but I do want them at least said. The PD, the extending of the PD to get more FAR. For what it is, I feel that that PD should not be extended and that the Neighborhood Opportunity Fund option should be taken for this site. That's why that was created. And the dog leg of a PD. I thought we were trying to get away from those type of things as a city. So take that for what it is. Also the streetscape along Halsted. I can't think of a more urban corner outside of the loop. And I know that open space is something that the city has consistently been looking for in this area. I would argue that that's just not a good location for it. You're right next to the L. And to have those plantings there, you know, I'm not sure they're going to do well. And to me, that almost looks like a suburban court on Halsted Street. Again, these aren't directed necessarily towards the design team or design comments. I know those are city policies I'm commenting on, so please take that for what it is. And then I do agree with Phil's comments on the balconies. I'm not sure what the West Loop design guidelines say about balconies. I would be curious for someone to kind of tell us what the design guidelines say. I can't recall any projects we've seen recently in the West Loop residential projects that have balconies. And then a minor nit for the design of the porte cochere and kind of how the fins and the lights go under it. It very much reminds me of the Gensler project, just I think it's almost across the street, and that Muse and how that that project, that design works there, as well as another Shapek project that is happening a little bit further west. I would hate to see that type of design detail become something that's replicated now on all these new projects. So I would tag on to what Phil said and encourage you to try to think a little bit more outside the box when it comes to that detailing. So that's it. Thank you, guys.
Thank you for the comments. We'll definitely take that under consideration and study what you suggested and do some additional research into the balcony requirements.
Thank you.
Okay, any final questions or comments from the committee? Catherine?
Thank you. I just have a quick question about your bike parking, and I'm looking at your sustainability goals, and I see you're not really taking any points for bike parking. I'm just curious. I would ask you to look at where your bike parking, your bike storage is, and how you get in and out of the building from that bike storage, especially since it doesn't seem like you are taking points, at least on the version that we have for that. So that would just be my comment to look at.
Okay, certainly. Thank you for the comment. We'll review that in more detail and make sure that we're buttoned up there. We are planning to provide a full 1-to-1 ratio of unit to bike parking. So there will be 406 bike parking spaces provided on site.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. I think that brings our meeting to a wrap here. Thank you to the committee members for your time. Thank you to our presenting teams for your thorough presentations. Thank you also to the public attendees who were sharing some thoughts on the Q&A session. We appreciate your input as well. And with that, we will adjourn. As a reminder to the applicant teams, we will be submitting formal written comments within a week's time following this session. And then committee members, we will see you in the executive session here, maybe in about 5 or 10 minutes. Take a little break, and we'll see you in their Zoom link. Thank you all.
Thank you.